I stared at the contract on my desk like it might bite me. Riley Baker's biography. The woman who hadn't spoken a word in 3 years, and they wanted me to somehow extract her life story. This is career suicide, I muttered, signing anyway. The drive to Chula Vista felt endless. Spring rain drummed against my windshield as I navigated the winding roads to Riley's secluded home. My publisher had been clear: get the story or find another job. Simple enough. Except my subject had aphasia, and apparently trusted no one. Riley's house sat like a fortress among eucalyptus trees. I knocked twice before the door opened to reveal a woman who took my breath away. Blonde hair caught the afternoon light, blue eyes assessed me with sharp intelligence. She was taller than I'd expected, wearing a simple white sweater that somehow looked expensive. She handed me a note. "You must be Vanessa. I don't speak anymore." "I know," I said softly. "But maybe we can find other ways." Something flickered in those blue eyes. Curiosity, perhaps. She led me through rooms filled with books and half-finished paintings. Every surface held evidence of a creative mind trapped behind silence. We stopped in her study, where towers of manuscripts created a paper maze. "These are yours?" I asked. She nodded, then wrote quickly on a notepad. "Started. Never finished. Can't find the endings anymore." Her handwriting was elegant, confident. I picked up one manuscript titled "Words I Cannot Say" and felt my heart twist. The first page described the moment when language disappeared from her world. "My editor thinks your story will inspire people," I said. Riley wrote, "My story is broken pieces. How do you build inspiration from wreckage?" The vulnerability in that question made me want to reach for her hand, but I stopped myself. Professional boundaries, I reminded myself. "Sometimes broken things make the most beautiful art," I said. She studied me for a long moment, then wrote, "Stay for tea?" We sat in her kitchen as evening shadows grew long. She moved with quiet grace, brewing tea without words but somehow communicating everything through glances and gestures. When she handed me my cup, our fingers brushed for just a moment. "I read all your novels," I admitted. "Before the accident, I mean. Your words changed something in me." Riley's eyes widened. She wrote frantically, "Which one?" "Midnight Conversations. I was 23, confused about everything. Your character Emma showed me it was okay to love who I loved." Riley's hand stilled on her pen. She looked at me differently now, seeing something she'd missed before. "I'm gay too," I said quietly. She nodded slowly, then wrote, "Emma was my first truth." The silence stretched between us, but it felt different now. Warmer, connected. "Will you let me tell your story?" I asked. Riley considered this, pen hovering over paper. Finally she wrote, "Can you tell a story when half the words are missing? We'll find new ways to fill the spaces," I promised. Something shifted in her expression. The walls didn't disappear, but maybe a window had opened. She wrote one final note before walking me to the door. "Come back tomorrow. Bring patience." As I drove home through the California night, I realized I'd just accepted the most challenging assignment of my career. But something about Riley Baker's broken words and unfinished stories called to me. Maybe we were both looking for endings we couldn't find alone. I returned the next morning armed with colored markers, photo albums, and music playlists loaded on my phone. If Riley couldn't speak her story, maybe she could paint it, show it, hum it. "Creative communication," I announced, spreading my supplies across her dining table. Riley watched with amused skepticism, writing, "Are you planning to fingerprint me?" "If that's what it takes." I started with music. "Show me what your life sounded like before." Her face lit up. She scrolled through my playlists and pointed to Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now. As the song played, she moved around the room, touching objects that clearly held memories. A guitar in the corner. A photo of 2 women laughing on a beach. Her fingers lingered on that one. "Tell me about her," I said gently. Riley's expression clouded. She wrote, "Some stories are too heavy for paper." "Then don't write them. Draw them." I handed her markers and watched as she sketched 2 figures holding hands beneath stars. Simple lines, but the emotion was unmistakable. "She was your partner?" Riley nodded, then drew an X over the second figure. "The accident?" Another nod. Her hand trembled slightly. We worked through the morning, building a language of colors and gestures. Riley grew more animated, more present. When she laughed silently at something I said, My heart fluttered in a way that had nothing to do with professional interest. Around noon, Marcus arrived. Riley's assistant was a thin man with worried eyes who clearly saw me as a threat. 5 biographers have tried and failed, he told me privately while Riley prepared lunch. She doesn't need someone else poking at old wounds. I'm not poking, I'm listening. With what? She doesn't speak. People communicate in more ways than words, Marcus. He studied me suspiciously. Just remember she's paying you to write about her life, not complicate it. His warning stung because part of me knew he was right. The way I'd started looking at Riley, the flutter I felt when she smiled, it wasn't entirely professional. That evening, I stayed late. Riley made pasta while I organized our day's discoveries. The kitchen felt intimate in lamplight, her movements graceful and sure. You're a good cook, I observed. She wrote, cooking is like writing. You combine elements and hope for magic. Do you miss it? Writing stories? Riley paused, sauce spoon halfway to her mouth for tasting. She wrote slowly, I miss believing in happy endings. Maybe they're just different than you expected. She looked at me then, really looked, and something electric passed between us. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, see the flecks of gold in her blue eyes. Vanessa, she wrote on a napkin, just my name, but the way she wrote it felt like a question. Yes? She touched my face gently, thumb tracing my cheekbone. My breath caught. This was dangerous territory, crossing every professional line I'd ever drawn. But when she leaned closer, I didn't pull away. Her lips were soft, tentative at first, then more certain when I responded. The kiss tasted like wine and possibility. When we separated, she wrote quickly, I shouldn't have done that. Why not? Because you'll leave when the book is finished. What if I don't want to? Riley's eyes searched mine. She wrote, what if you change your mind? What if you stop assuming the worst? She laughed silently, shaking her head. Then she wrote, stay tonight, please. I knew I should say no. Should maintain boundaries. Should remember why I was here. Instead, I said, okay. We spent hours on her couch, talking through written notes and gentle touches. She told me about her dreams, the stories still trapped in her head. I told her about my failed relationships, my fear of never writing anything meaningful. When she finally led me to her guest room, she paused at the door. Thank you, she wrote, for seeing me as more than broken. You're not broken, Riley. You're just speaking a different language. She kissed me again, softer this time, and I knew I was falling for someone whose story was becoming tangled with my own. The morning after our kiss felt awkward. Riley made coffee in careful silence while I pretended to review my notes. Every glance felt charged, every accidental touch like lightning. About last night, I started. Riley handed me a note. Mistake. Won't happen again. My stomach dropped. Okay. But her eyes said otherwise. Marcus arrived with unexpected news. Riley needs to get out more. Doctor's orders. Maybe try that dog training class she's been avoiding. Riley shot him a look that could kill. Actually, that sounds perfect, I said. My golden retriever Max could use some manners. Riley wrote, I don't have a dog. Marcus grinned. Not yet. But Bella at the rescue center needs you. An hour later, we stood in Sweetwater Regional Park watching a chaos of dogs and their equally chaotic owners. Riley held the leash of a beautiful golden retriever mix, her knuckles white with nervousness. First time? Asked the instructor, a cheerful woman named Diane. Riley nodded, but I noticed she was watching my Max intently. He was pulling toward her dog like a magnet. That's interesting, Diane observed. They seem to know each other. The two dogs were practically vibrating with excitement, circling each other and making soft whining sounds. When did you get yours? I asked Riley. She wrote, yesterday. Rescue said she was returned twice, bad with separation. Max, too. He was found with his littermates last year. Diane overheard and walked over with a clipboard. What are their names again? Max, I said. Riley wrote Bella on her notepad. Diane's face lit up. Oh my, you two have Abbott siblings. What? Same litter. The Abbott rescue from last spring. 5 puppies found abandoned in Bonita. These two were inseparable until they were adopted separately. I stared at Riley, who was staring at me. The dogs had given up any pretense of training and were now wrestling joyfully on the grass. "What are the odds?" I whispered. Riley wrote slowly, "Universe has strange timing." During the training session, we worked as a natural team. Riley's quiet presence calmed both dogs, while I provided the verbal commands. When she smiled at Max's successful sit-stay, my heart did something complicated. "You're good with him," I said. Riley wrote, "Animals don't need words. They understand hearts." "Is that what you think I don't understand?" She looked at me seriously, then wrote, "You understand too much. That's what scares me." After class, we walked the dogs through the park. Max and Bella trotted ahead like old friends reunited. "They're happy together," Riley wrote. "Maybe they can teach us something." She stopped walking. "Vanessa, I know. Professional boundaries. But watching you with Bella, seeing you smile like that." Riley wrote quickly, "I can't give you what you want." "What do I want?" "Someone who can tell you they love you." The honesty broke something open in my chest. "What if I told you there are other ways to say it?" She studied my face for a long moment, then wrote, "Show me." I took her hand, intertwining our fingers. "This says something." She squeezed gently. "And this?" I said, stepping closer until we were breathing the same air. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And especially this," I whispered, kissing her forehead softly. Riley pulled back and wrote with shaking hands, "What if I break your heart?" "What if you don't?" She leaned against me then, just letting me hold her while the dogs played nearby. I felt her silent sobs against my shoulder. When she finally pulled away, she wrote, "Walk with me tomorrow?" "Every day if you want." She wrote one more thing. "Maybe dogs are smarter than people. They remember love even when it disappears." As we walked back to our cars, Max and Bella looked over their shoulders at each other constantly, already missing their reunion. "Same time tomorrow?" I asked. Riley nodded, then wrote, "Thank you for not giving up on broken things." "You're not broken, Riley. You're just finding new ways to be whole." That night, I thought about fate and timing, about two dogs who remembered being family, and two women who were learning to be brave enough for love. Our dog walks had become sacred time. For 3 weeks, Riley and I met every afternoon at the park, watching Max and Bella rediscover their bond while we discovered ours. But today felt different. Riley was distracted, checking her phone constantly. When I asked if everything was okay, she just shrugged and wrote, "Cleaning study. Found things." "What kind of things?" She didn't answer, just watched the dogs with unusual intensity. At her house afterward, I understood. Her study looked like a tornado had hit it. Boxes of photos covered every surface, old manuscripts stacked precariously on chairs. "Spring cleaning?" I joked. Riley handed me a photograph without warning. My blood turned cold. It was me, 10 years younger, standing at a podium in what looked like a college auditorium. Behind me hung a banner, UCSD Literary Society Annual Reading. "Where did you get this?" Riley wrote, "Found it in my college box. Look closer." I studied the photo. In the audience, partially hidden by shadows but unmistakably there, sat a younger Riley. Same blonde hair, same intelligent eyes, watching my reading with what looked like fascination. We were there together? Riley handed me another photo. This one showed the reception afterward. There I was, talking animatedly to a group of students, and there was Riley standing just at the edge of the frame, holding a cup of wine and staring directly at me. "I don't remember you," I whispered. Riley wrote, "I remember you. You read a story about finding courage to love authentically. I wanted to talk to you after, but what?" I wasn't ready to be authentic yet. My hands shook as I set down the photos. "So when my publisher assigned me your biography," Riley wrote, "Coincidence. Or maybe not." "Why didn't you tell me?" Her pen hesitated, then moved slowly. "Because then you'd know I've been half in love with you since before we met." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her across the cluttered study, this woman who'd been carrying a piece of my story for a decade without me knowing. "Riley?" She was already writing furiously. "I know it's crazy. I know it complicates everything. But seeing you that night, hearing your words about brave love, it planted something in me that never died. You fell in love with a stranger giving a reading?" She wrote, I fell in love with someone who made me believe I could be brave too. Someday. I moved closer, stepping over scattered manuscripts. And now? Now I'm terrified because the dream is real and dreams break easier than fantasies. I'm not a fantasy, Riley. I'm right here. She looked up at me, eyes bright with fear and hope. What if you're disappointed by the real me? I knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. What if I'm not? She leaned down and kissed me then, soft and desperate. When we separated, she wrote quickly, I should have introduced myself that night. 10 years we could have had. We have now. Do we? I kissed her again, longer this time, tasting tears I didn't know she was crying. We have whatever we make of this moment. Riley stood abruptly, pacing between the photo boxes. She grabbed a notebook and wrote in large letters, I can't speak, but I've never stopped loving the sound of your voice. The raw honesty shattered something inside me. Riley, stop. She kept writing, I've read every article you've written, every interview. I told myself IT wasn't stalking, just admiration. Stop, please. I choreographed loving you for 10 years in my head. I grabbed the pen from her hand. And what about loving me in reality? She stared at me, breathing hard. Finally, she wrote in small letters, reality is scarier. Reality can leave. I won't leave. You can't promise that. I can promise to try. Riley sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. She picked up one of the photos, the one where she was watching me read. I was so young, she wrote. So scared of everything I felt. What do you feel now? She wrote slowly. Like, maybe scared isn't the same as impossible. I gathered some of the scattered photos, studying these glimpses of our near-missed connection. Do you think we would have worked back then? Riley considered this. No. I wasn't ready for someone real. I needed the safety of loving from a distance. And now? She reached for my hand, tracing patterns on my palm with her finger. It was intimate and electric and spoke louder than words. Now, I think courage isn't about not being scared, she wrote. It's about being scared and choosing love anyway. I lifted her hand to my lips, kissing her fingertips. Then, choose. Riley smiled, the first completely unguarded expression I'd seen from her. She wrote one word, you. The kiss that followed tasted like 10 years of waiting, and the promise of whatever came next. Riley's invitation to cook dinner together came written on expensive paper, her handwriting careful and formal, like she was asking me to a diplomatic function rather than pasta in her kitchen. You don't have to be nervous, I told her as we stood in the grocery store, comparing wine bottles. She wrote, I haven't cooked for someone I care about in 3 years. What about Marcus? Marcus doesn't count. He's paid to tolerate my cooking. I laughed and picked a bottle of red wine. I'm sure you're better than you think. Riley's cooking turned out to be extraordinary. She moved around the kitchen like a dancer, communicating through gestures when she needed me to hand her ingredients or stir something. We fell into an easy rhythm, her silent direction, and my chatter creating something that felt like domestic bliss. You could do this professionally, I said, watching her plate the most perfect risotto I'd ever seen. Riley wrote, cooking is like writing used to be. I know what I want to create, I just can't explain it anymore. Maybe you don't need to explain. Maybe you just need to create. We ate by candlelight, the wine making everything feel softer around the edges. Riley had pulled her hair back, and the flickering light caught the elegant line of her neck. I found myself staring more than eating. Tell me something no one else knows, I said. Riley considered this, twirling her wine glass between her fingers. Finally, she wrote, I dream in conversations I can't have when I'm awake. What do we talk about in your dreams? Her cheeks flushed pink, everything, nothing. The way people in love do. The admission hung between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we should cross. Are we in love? I asked quietly. Riley wrote, I don't know. What does love feel like when you find it twice with the same person? Before I could answer, thunder cracked overhead. Rain began pelting the windows in heavy sheets. Damn spring storms, Riley wrote, but she was smiling. I should go before it gets worse. She caught my wrist as I started to stand. Her eyes asked a question her voice couldn't. Or, I could stay, I said. Riley nodded, still holding my wrist. Her thumb traced small circles on my skin, and I felt my resolve crumbling. More wine led to more confessions. We moved to her couch, sitting close enough that her hair brushed my shoulder when she leaned forward to write. The storm outside made the house feel like a cocoon. "What would you say to me if you could?" I asked. Riley wrote for a long time, that falling in love with you feels like remembering something I forgot I was missing. That your laugh makes me want to find my voice again. That I think about kissing you every time you bite your lip when you're concentrating. I'm biting my lip right now. She looked up from her notepad and smiled. I know. When she kissed me this time, it was different, deeper. Her hands tangled in my hair and I could taste the wine on her lips, feel the years of wanting in the way she pulled me closer. "Riley," I whispered against her mouth. She pushed me back gently, writing quickly, "I want you. But I need you to be sure this isn't just research. This stopped being research the moment I saw you in that first photograph." She studied my face in the dim light, then wrote, "Stay with me tonight. Really stay." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Riley led me upstairs to her bedroom, her hand trembling slightly in mine. She turned on a small lamp that cast everything in warm gold. "You're shaking," I observed. She wrote, "It's been a long time since I wanted someone to see me. I've been seeing you since the day we met." She kissed me then with a hunger that made my knees weak. When her hands found the hem of my shirt, I helped her lift it over my head. The cool air made me shiver, but Riley's touch was warm as she traced patterns across my skin. We undressed each other slowly, mapping new territory with careful fingers. When Riley laid back against her pillows, hair spread like gold silk, I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Our lovemaking was tender and desperate and perfect. Riley communicated through touch what her voice couldn't say, her body telling me stories no words could capture. When she arched beneath me, eyes closed and lips parted, I understood why some things were too sacred for language. Afterward, we lay tangled together, listening to the rain on the windows. "No regrets?" I asked, tracing the curve of her shoulder. Riley reached for the notepad on her nightstand and wrote, "Only that we waited so long." I woke before dawn to find Riley watching me sleep, a small smile playing at her lips. "Morning," I whispered. She wrote, "I forgot how beautiful mornings could be with someone you love." "Love?" Riley's pen paused, then continued, "Yes, I love you, Vanessa. Even if I can only write it." "I love you too," I said, and kissed her until the sun came up. 3 weeks of stolen mornings and secret dinners had made me reckless. Riley and I existed in a bubble where deadlines and professional obligations felt distant and unimportant. That bubble burst on a Tuesday morning when my editor called. "Vanessa, we need that first draft by Friday." "Friday?" I stared at my laptop screen, which showed exactly 12 pages of actual biography amid pages of personal observations about Riley's laugh and the way she made coffee. The publicity department is breathing down my neck. Riley Baker's story could be huge if we time it right. "I need more time, James. You've had 2 months. How hard is it to get one woman to tell her story?" If only he knew how complicated that question had become. I hung up and found Riley in her garden, reading with Bella at her feet. She looked up when I approached, immediately sensing my mood. "Problem?" she wrote. Deadline moved up. "I haven't written enough actual biography." Riley's expression shifted. She wrote slowly, "Because you've been busy writing our story instead?" "Riley." "It's okay. I knew this moment would come." "What moment?" She stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. "When you have to choose between your career and whatever this is, it's not a choice. I can do both." Riley wrote, "Can you? Your editor expects my trauma packaged nicely for public consumption. How do you write that while protecting what we have?" Before I could answer, a car pulled into the driveway. My stomach dropped as Sarah Chen stepped out, looking polished and confident in her lawyer suit. "Vanessa?" I tried calling. Riley looked between us, immediately understanding. She wrote, "Ex-girlfriend? Sarah, what are you doing here?" "Looking for you. You've been impossible to reach." Sarah glanced at Riley with professional politeness. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were working." "I'm Riley," Riley wrote, holding up the notepad. Sarah read it with surprise. Oh, the silent author. Vanessa's been fascinating to live with while working on your story. We don't live together anymore, I said quickly. Details. Sarah waved dismissively. Van, we need to talk about the partnership offer. Brennan, Sheffield and Associates made their final proposal. My dream job offer. The one I'd been waiting for before my publisher assignment. I'd forgotten Sarah was still negotiating terms. Now isn't a good time. It's a great time. You're clearly done with this project, and they need an answer by Thursday. Riley stepped back like she'd been slapped. She wrote, You have another job offer? Riley, let me explain. But she was already walking toward the house, Bella trotting behind her. Who is she exactly? Sarah asked, watching Riley's retreat. None of your business. Come on, Van. She's beautiful, but she's also a professional dead end. You can't build a career on one biography about a woman who doesn't talk. Don't. I'm trying to help. The partnership offer is real money, real prestige. Don't throw it away for some rebound romance. This isn't a rebound. Sarah studied my face with the analytical look that once attracted me and now made me want to run. You're sleeping with your subject. Damn, Vanessa. You need to leave. I need to save you from yourself. Remember what happened with Jessica? You fell hard and fast. Then she left and you couldn't work for months. Riley isn't Jessica. Riley is worse. She's vulnerable, probably dependent on you for emotional support. This is a mess waiting to explode. I found Riley in her study, furiously organizing papers. She didn't look up when I entered. Sarah's gone. Riley wrote without stopping her movements, but the job offer isn't. I haven't accepted anything. Yet. Riley, look at me. She finally turned, and I saw tears she was trying to hide. Is it better, the other job? I sat on the edge of her desk. It's corporate law writing, contracts and briefs, boring but stable. And this, writing my story? This is the best assignment I've ever had. Not because of the story, because of you. Riley wrote, What if the story isn't enough? What if I'm not enough? Stop. Sarah's right. You have a real career to think about. I'm just a woman who can't even tell you she loves you properly. I caught her hands, stilling her nervous movements. You tell me every day. In the way you make my coffee exactly how I like it. In the way you wait for me to finish talking before you start writing. In the way you trust me with your silence. That's not enough for forever. What if it's perfect for now? Riley pulled away, writing quickly, I won't be responsible for ruining your life. You're not ruining anything. You're saving everything I didn't know I wanted. Vanessa, be practical. Practical is overrated. Riley laughed despite her tears. She wrote, Says the woman who just had her dream job handed to her. My dreams changed. People's dreams don't change that fast. Mine did. The moment you opened that door and handed me your first note. Riley studied my face like she was memorizing it. Then she wrote, Prove it. How? Choose. Riley's challenge hung between us like a gauntlet thrown down. Choose. But first, I needed the whole truth. Tell me about the accident, I said. Riley's face went white. She shook her head. I've been writing around it for 2 months, dancing around the edges of your trauma because I thought I was protecting you. But how can I choose you if I don't know what I'm choosing? Riley wrote with shaking hands. Some stories destroy everything. This one is already destroying us by staying hidden. She stared at her notepad for a long moment, then walked to a locked drawer in her desk. Inside were medical documents, police reports, and photos I'd never seen. Car accident, she wrote. 3 years ago, I was driving. You were hurt? I was driving Anna to the hospital. She was having a panic attack, couldn't breathe. I was scared, driving too fast. Riley's handwriting grew more erratic. Drunk driver ran a red light. I studied the photos. The car was completely destroyed on the passenger side. My blood turned cold. Riley? She wrote, Anna died instantly. I woke up 3 days later and couldn't speak. Doctor called it trauma-induced aphasia, my mind protecting itself by taking away the words that caused the accident. What words? Riley's hand trembled as she wrote. We were fighting. About her ex, about trust, about everything. I said horrible things. The last words I ever spoke were telling her I didn't know why I loved someone who constantly doubted me. The pieces clicked together. And she died thinking you meant it. Riley nodded, tears flowing freely now. Oh, honey. I reached for her, but she pulled back. She wrote frantically, I killed her with my anger, then killed my voice with guilt. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve forgiveness. I especially don't deserve you. That's not true. How can you say that? I'm broken in ways that can't be fixed. You're not broken. You're grieving. Riley wrote, for 3 years I've lived in silence because words are weapons I can't trust myself to wield. Then you show up and make me want to try again. But what if I hurt you too? I moved closer despite her resistance. What if you don't? You can't know that. Neither can you. That's what makes it brave. Riley stared at me through her tears. What if my voice never comes back? What if I stay silent forever? Then we learn sign language. We write novels together. We find new ways to communicate. I caught her hands. Riley, I don't need you to speak. I need you to trust that love isn't always about having the right words. Anna died hating me. Anna died loving someone who was human enough to fight with her. Fighting isn't the same as not loving. Riley wrote, how do you know? Because you've told me about her 100 times without saying her name. The way you arrange flowers like she taught you. How you can't listen to Nina Simone because it was her favorite. Love doesn't die in car accidents, Riley. People do. Something shifted in Riley's expression. She wrote slowly, I've been afraid to love you because losing Anna felt like losing myself. And now? Now I think losing you would feel like losing myself all over again. I cupped her face gently. So don't lose me. The job offer can go to hell. Riley's eyes widened. She wrote, you can't mean that. Watch me. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number. Van, thank God. Have you come to your senses? Tell Brennan, Sheffield and Associates thank you, but no. What? Vanessa, I'm thinking about building something real for once instead of building a resume. You're making a mistake. I'm making a choice. I hung up and looked at Riley. There, chosen. Riley stared at me in shock. She wrote, you just turned down your dream job. I turned down someone else's idea of my dream job. Turns out my actual dreams are sitting right here crying over a notepad. Riley laughed through her tears. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever written about my emotional breakdown. I love your emotional breakdowns. They're honest. She set down her pen and looked at me seriously. What happens now? Now we figure it out together. Your biography gets written, but on our terms. My career gets rebuilt, but around what actually matters to me. What if? I silenced her with a kiss, gentle at first, then deeper when she responded. When we separated, I said, what if we stop asking what if and start asking what now? Riley picked up her pen one more time. What now? Now you trust me. Now I trust you. Now we stop letting fear make decisions for us. Riley nodded slowly. Then something extraordinary happened. She opened her mouth and made a sound. Not a word, just a soft exhalation, but it was the first intentional sound I'd heard from her. Riley? She tried again, her voice barely a whisper. Van. Essa. My name, cracked and rusty, but unmistakably spoken. You talked. Barely. Her voice was like sandpaper, unused and fragile. Say it again. Vanessa. Clearer this time, like remembering how. I kissed her then with everything I had, tasting 3 years of silence breaking open. When we separated, she whispered against my lips, choose me again. Every day, I promised. That night, we made love with a desperate hunger, knowing we'd crossed some invisible line into territory neither of us had mapped before. Riley whispered my name like a prayer, her voice growing stronger with each breathless repetition. Riley's voice returned like a reluctant spring, words blooming slowly after years of silence. But my publisher had different plans. Vanessa, this is career suicide. James paced his office like a caged animal. You've missed 3 deadlines, and now you're telling me you want to completely rewrite the angle? Riley's story isn't about overcoming aphasia. It's about finding new ways to communicate love. Save the poetry for your personal journal. We need trauma and triumph, not romance novel fluff. And if I refuse? James stopped pacing. Then we sue for breach of contract and assign the book to someone who understands what sells. My blood boiled. Someone who'll exploit her vulnerability for profit? Someone who'll do their job. I walked out without another word. Riley found me on her porch an hour later, staring at the legal documents James had sent. Her voice was still whisper soft but growing stronger each day. "How bad?" she asked. "They want to sue me for refusing to write your story as inspiration tragedy. They're threatening to give it to someone else." Riley sat beside me, reading over the contract details. "This is my fault." "No, it's corporate greed. Vanessa, let them have it." I stared at her. "What?" "Let someone else write the official biography. We'll tell our real story ourselves." "Riley." "I'm serious." Her voice was stronger now, conviction lending it power. "Why should we let them package my trauma for mass consumption when we could create something authentic? Because I need this job to survive." "Do you? Or do you think you do?" I considered this. The truth was, I'd been living on savings and hope for months, too caught up in Riley's world to worry about practical things. "We could be freelance partners," Riley continued. "Write the stories that matter instead of the stories that sell." That's incredibly naive. That's incredibly brave. Riley's therapist Marcus arrived for their session, but she waved him off. "We need to handle the publisher situation." Marcus had been watching our relationship develop with increasing concern. "Riley, you're making major life decisions in an emotionally charged state." "I'm making decisions from a place of love," she corrected. "Same thing, and equally dangerous." "Marcus," Riley's voice carried new authority. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm not your patient anymore. I'm a woman who's finally ready to fight for what matters." Marcus looked between us with resignation. "Just promise me you'll think this through." After he left, Riley and I strategized like generals planning a campaign. We would self-publish her real story, told in our voices, with proceeds going to aphasia research. My publisher could go find their exploitation story elsewhere. "You realize this could destroy both our careers?" I said. "What careers?" "Yours is built on other people's trauma, and mine died 3 years ago." I laughed despite everything. "When did you become so wise?" "When I remembered that some things are worth the risk." The next morning brought unexpected support. Riley's editor from before the accident called with an offer. "Independent publishing house, small but respected. They want your joint memoir." "Joint memoir?" Riley asked, her voice steadier than I'd heard it. "About finding love through loss, healing through connection. They're offering advance money and creative control." Riley and I looked at each other across her kitchen table. This could work. My publisher's response was swift and vicious. James arrived that afternoon with a lawyer and threats of lawsuits that would bankrupt us both. "You cannot steal this story," he declared. "It's my story," Riley said clearly, her voice cutting through his bluster. "Not yours to steal." "Your contract covers the biography Vanessa was originally hired to write, not the story we're choosing to tell now." The lawyer whispered something to James. "We'll see you in court." After they left, Riley and I sat in stunned silence. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly. "Only about not doing this sooner." That evening, we worked on our proposal for the independent publisher. Riley's words flowed like music, her voice growing stronger with each sentence. When she read our draft aloud, I fell in love with her all over again. "Listen to this," she said, voice clear and confident. "Love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who helps you complete yourself." Perfect. Riley set down the pages and looked at me seriously. "Vanessa, what if we fail? What if nobody wants our real story?" "Then we'll have told it anyway. And that's worth something." She moved around the table to sit beside me. "I love you for believing in this. I love you for making me brave enough to try." When Riley kissed me, I tasted courage and possibility. Her hands tangled in my hair as I ran my fingers along the curve of her neck. We moved to the couch, urgency making our touches desperate and tender. "Tell me again," I whispered, as she kissed her way down my throat. "I love you, Vanessa Chen, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life learning new ways to say it." The next morning, we submitted our proposal and waited for the world to change. 6 months later, I stood in the crowded bookstore watching Riley sign copies of Silent Words, Spoken Hearts, a love story in 2 voices. Her blonde hair caught the afternoon light as she spoke clearly to each reader, her voice steady and sure. "The most beautiful thing about finding my voice again," she told a young woman, "was realizing I had more to say than I thought." Our book launch exceeded everyone's expectations. The independent publisher had been right about audiences craving authentic stories. Reviews called it a masterpiece of vulnerability and proof that love really can heal. My former publisher tried one last desperate lawsuit, but our legal team demolished their claims. Turns out stealing someone's story is much harder when they're willing to defend it. Next, Riley called, and I watched her interact with fans who saw her as proof that broken things could become beautiful again. Marcus approached me during a quiet moment. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For thinking you'd hurt her. Instead, you helped her find herself. We helped each other. That's obvious to anyone watching you two together." After the last book was signed, Riley found me reorganizing the display table unnecessarily. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified. What if this is as good as it gets?" Riley laughed, the sound still magical to me after months. "Vanessa, we just told our love story to the world and they bought it. Literally. What comes next?" "Whatever we want. The publisher wants our next book. We have speaking engagements lined up. Max and Bella need a bigger yard." "Max and Bella?" Riley pulled a real estate listing from her purse. "I've been thinking we need a place that belongs to both of us. Something with room for 2 dogs, 2 writers, and whatever comes next." The house in the photo was perfect. Craftsman style with a large yard and 2 office spaces. "Riley Baker, are you asking me to move in with you officially?" "I'm asking you to build something permanent with me. Something that can't be threatened by publishers or ex-girlfriends or fear." I kissed her right there in front of the remaining crowd, not caring who saw. When we separated, the bookstore erupted in applause. "Is that a yes?" Riley asked against my lips. "That's a hell yes." 3 months later, we stood in our new kitchen, unpacking boxes while Max and Bella explored their expanded kingdom. Riley's voice had grown rich and expressive, though she still wrote notes when emotions overwhelmed her capacity for speech. "Package came," she announced, holding up a thick envelope. Inside was the first foreign translation of our book, French. The title read, Mot silencieux, coeur parlant. "Our story is traveling," I marveled. "Maybe it'll help someone else be brave." I found Riley later that evening sitting at her new desk, working on something secret. When she saw me approaching, she quickly covered her notebook. "What are you hiding?" "Nothing." "Riley Baker, you're a terrible liar." She sighed and revealed her work, a handwritten proposal for our next book project. "A novel?" I read aloud. "About 2 women who meet in a dog training class?" "Fiction based on truth." "I thought we could write it together. Your voice, my story, something completely new." I sit in her lap, studying her excited face. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Building a life together?" "Unless you have objections." "Only one." Riley's face fell. "What?" I pointed to her notebook. "The main characters need better names than Jane and Susan." Riley's relieved laughter filled our new home. "I love you, Vanessa Chen." "I love you too, Riley Baker. Even when you name fictional characters like you're filling out tax forms." That night, we made love in our bedroom for the first time, surrounded by boxes that held our combined lives. Afterward, Riley traced patterns on my shoulder while I drifted toward sleep. "Vanessa?" "Thank you for seeing me before I could see myself. Thank you for teaching me that the best stories don't always have words." 1 year later, our second book topped bestseller lists, and we were invited to speak at literary conferences about collaborative writing. But the moment I treasure most happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Riley was making coffee when she suddenly stopped and called my name. Not the careful, deliberate way she'd been speaking, but spontaneous and natural, like her voice had never been gone at all. "What?" I called back from upstairs. "Nothing. I just wanted to hear myself say your name." I came downstairs to find her grinning like she'd discovered something wonderful. "Say it again," I requested. "Vanessa. Vanessa. Vanessa." Each repetition sounded more like home than the last. We never did figure out if fate or coincidence brought us together twice, But standing in our kitchen on that ordinary Tuesday, listening to Riley speak my name like a celebration, I decided it didn't matter. Some stories are perfect just as they are, questions and all.